Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me again, and here's another update on the 1964 Dodge Custom 880. Today, I believe it's a little bit of a request by one of my viewers. My viewer wants to see the removal process of a gas tank on these Chrysler C-bodies. Should apply to a lot of the 60s Chrysler 300s. And a lot of the letter cars also. You'll have the L, J, and K. Those cars kind of like are pretty much the same as these Chrysler C bodies or 880s also. The removal process of these gas tanks are pretty straightforward. All you have to do is just kind of be mindful that do not use any bulbs or light sources that kind of give off heat. So don't use any halogens or anything like that. So when you're going to be working around the gas tank, use something like an LED work light that works well. Also be mindful how much fuel you have in your tank. You can also siphon your tank by using a siphon pump, or you can use some aquarium tubing. You can find aquarium tubing at your Home Depot, Lowe's, even some pet stores have aquarium tubing, clear aquarium tubing. It's kind of important to see that. And have a catch pan to collect all the fuel if you do that. And it can be very different, as some of these Chryslers have a drain plug, but in my case, mine doesn't when it's supposed to. The 64 should have one, but mine didn't have one, so kind of strange. So if you're looking toward the rear of the car, toward the differential, or I mean toward the engine, the gas tank drain plug should be around here. 63s and 64s have this, but unfortunately mine doesn't have one, which is strange. So I'm guessing this is like an aftermarket gas tank or something like that. But the previous owner did tell me that he did redo the gas tank, so it might have been that time where the drain plug got removed, or maybe just the entirety of the tank got changed over. But anywho, let's get into the removal process of the gas tank. So today I'm going to be using a jack and a piece of wood between the jack, just to kind of, well, I guess soften the blow on the gas tank a bit. And you kind of center it roughly along the center of the tank, and I'll show it to you now where it's roughly centered. The tank is pretty much centered. If you follow this center line here, the jack is centered right underneath the tank, and you kind of would like to center along this little angle that's about to start, because when you lower the gas tank and has some fuel in it, the tank's going to want to bow backwards. And you'll kind of counteract that by jacking it right here along this little angled portion. Also, another precautionary thing is make sure your ignition is switched to off before you start doing anything with the tank, especially taking off the sender unit wires, as they may be energized, and we wouldn't want any sparks. And also, if it does make you feel better, disconnect the battery. It's not a bad idea to do that also. So we're looking toward the back of the tank, and after you have supported the entire tank with your jack or what have you, be mindful of where these gas tank hooks are, because we need to unbolt the J hooks, and that's all the way up here. And the bolts up here, it has a little nut attached to it. These are 9/16. So if you look up here, you'll have the sender, fuel sender ground strap, which is this long piece of steel that extends to here. We should disconnect this wire here. There you go. As simple as that. You just pull it right off and just keep it to the side. And you need to disconnect this ground strap here. So next, you're going to be disconnecting these hose clamps right here that attaches to the sender unit. So far, I have sufficiently screwed the nuts on the J-bolts off. Also here also. And a lot of the hardware on the sender unit is off also. So I think we are ready to lower the jack just a little bit. So if you have got the J-bolts sufficiently loose enough, you can pull one of these straps pretty much dangling as is, and you don't need to really remove this nut down here also. You just need to kind of like unhook it from this area up here. So I'll demonstrate that here, that this can be put back into place like that and disconnect by pulling up and down. So if you follow the gas tank straps back up toward the rear of the car, this is where it straps onto. The tank straps hook right up there. You can see just a little bit of it just right here. This one right here. So as you see me jiggling at that, is moving around. You can get that sufficiently off once the tank is out of the way. So right now I'm going to loosen the tension on the jack just a little bit to get it lower so I can remove some other hardware around the tank. So that should give me enough clearance to kind of start removing the hose near the sender. So after initially pulling off the hose, it can be twisted right off with your bare hands, but you can also use a channel lock or some pliers if it hurts your hand, or wear some gloves. In my case, my hands are fine. I can really grab onto that hose and twist it right off and it's no problem. And after the initial leak down, it won't really leak anymore, so you're kind of good right there. And remember how I said I was going to take off the upper hose clamp up here? Yeah, take off the bottom one as well and then move it toward the center here so that it's not really clamping onto the nipples around here, the sender nipple and the line nipple. And then you can really twist this hose right off. As you can see, this rotates quite easily if you have these clamps centered right here where it's not grabbing onto the hoses or the sender also, or the lines. Also, don't forget the little sheet metal screw that hangs onto your little filler neck here. You can see the sheet metal screw right here. You can access that from the trunk compartment. So once you have the trunk popped open, the filler neck screw can be located right there. So once you have disconnected the filler tube sheet metal screw here, do be mindful that this filler tube can slam down against the body because the weight has shifted as the tank is no longer connected, so all the fluids could slosh backwards in the tank and the tank could come falling out backwards. In my case, it kind of did. So to avoid having to kind of like kink this filler tube that's up here, you'd want to, well, in my case, since I have a jack, I'm going to move the jack forward and then jack it down and then move it forward again so that this filler neck here incrementally avoids getting scraped against the frame or anything that's related to the body up here. So really take it slow because it ain't a race here. You're trying to lower the tank with the least amount of damage. Now, as hectic as it may look, you're going to move the tank forward and down at the same time to avoid the filler neck getting caught up by this little last piece of structural area on the car. So for the most part, the filler neck is pretty much not going to hit anything when it comes down, as you see here. Do you see that? Filler neck, when it comes down, or when the tank comes down, the filler neck is going to get caught on anything. And also, when the tank is down sufficiently enough, you can already remove these straps if able. At some point, you do just kind of need to bite the bullet and just yank it out of there. I'm going to try pushing from the other side. Almost there. Okay. Now I'm going to try to be removing some of this 2x4 that I put on the jack because it's kind of in the way. And the strap is now out of the way. And let's proceed to top it off with dropping the tank. There you go. Now your Chrysler C-body is getting 0 miles per gallon. Because there's no tank. Anywho, aside from that, let's take out the sender next. Now, when you get to this point, you are probably wondering, how am I going to get to the sender unit? Well, come on over here so I can show you. And sometimes these things tend to be pretty stubborn, so do give it a couple whacks, and even use some penetrating fluid. So the areas you need to be hammering on is these locations, these 3 areas. That area, there's a small raised area there, it's barely visible. And here also, and here. You hammer those down, rotate it counterclockwise, or hammer it counterclockwise, and it'll come off. This ring will come off, allowing you to pull out the sender. So you guys are probably very, very worried about like an explosion or something like that if you have not siphoned fuel out of the tank. Well, here's the thing. Fuel doesn't explode unless it's in vapor form. Fuel doesn't really explode when it's in its fluid state. So regrettably, I can't find my punch set. So I'm going to be rolling with this minus driver. And once the ring is removed, you'll notice there's a yep, okay, that's good. The sender. You can now get to the sender. And there you have it. Your sender is out. And the testing procedure with, or the test specs with these senders is you should get 20 ohms empty and 80 ohms full. Or I believe that's what it was, unless it's the other way around. But yeah, there's your sender. So I'm not going to really do any testing on this one because my gauge works already, and just taking out this tank was just for directional and educational purposes. And you should notice, if your car still has one, there's a little filter sock on the end here. Mine is gone, and unfortunately my filter sock is out of stock pretty much everywhere wherever I look. You will notice that there is a gasket here. Be gentle with this gasket as it could tear. And don't let, or try to minimize the amount of gunk that's going to fall in. And this gasket here is a service item. You should replace this every time you're servicing the gasketing for whatever reason. So the tank is pretty clean. I mean, it's got little specks of dirt and such, but that's probably from opening the filler cap to fill up and such. But this tank is pretty clean. Aside from that little piece right there. And as stated before, this tank has been cleaned out by the previous owners, or previous owner, one owner back. So this is I'm going to put this tank right back in. It kind of sucks that I can't really get the filter sock or the sender filter sock, because this filter sock here is 5/16 fuel line in my case, and I don't have 5/16 fuel line filter sock online that I could search for. So we're going to put this sender right back in and put the lock ring right back in. So my steps were kind of a little bit reversed, but to aid in installation of the tank, I'm going to siphon some fuel out. I believe I got this little siphon pump down at Tractor Supply, if you have a store like that around your place. I believe Home Depot and Lowe's should have something like this also. So you don't have to do it the usual way like I did a long time ago, where I would suck on the clear tubing until fuel came out. It's like an old way of siphoning, but this one's safer in a way. And I guess we're going to start moving on to installing the tank then. I'll kind of show it to you again on how it goes on and how it goes out also. So first, you drag the sender out straight on, and then when you start seeing the float, cock it to the 90 degrees to the right. Like that. And then once you do that, pull the float out just a little bit and straighten it back out toward the left, and there you go. That's how you remove it. Now the installation. Left side goes in first. Start twisting it to the right so that the float can go in. And once the float goes in, straighten it back out and slide it right in. And remember, the sender unit wire attachment should be off to the right, not to the left. Anyway, just seat that sender unit all the way down in there. There you go. Now it's seated all the way at the bottom. Get your lock ring. This smooth area down here of the lock ring faces down. towards center. Hammer the lock ring backwards, clockwise, on the little raised tangs. Do it from varying locations so that you kind of get the lock ring somewhat centered also. I think that's mostly in. We just need to hammer on this side a little bit more and then we're in. And there we go. Hammered in. So extra pounds here and there. On the back of this tank, on the gas tank here, you should have some kind of fabric material if it's still left. In my case, nothing was left. Might as well want to check up near the tank also. There's like this fabric material that separates the tank and the trunk area of the car. So what that does is it stops the reverberation from inside the tank that goes and prevents the sound from being transferred over inside the cabin. Now, I believe the term is called drumming. I'll leave this very educational video related to the Chrysler gas tanks in the description. And this guy's, I believe his channel name is Bob. He has a lot of material that's related to a lot of the Chryslers, C bodies, Chrysler 300s, ladder cars, you know, all that stuff. So I'll leave that in the description to his channel, and you'll be surprised on how much you can learn from his channel alone. So for the installation of the tank, you can either manhandle it because it's pretty lightweight now, or you can use the jack method that I was using earlier. The areas are here. Let's see if I can locate it. Here, that's where these straps go in. Alongside here, you have another hole right there, and you have to slant the strap in and then slide it in and down. That's how it'll go in from looking at here, if you can see that. Also, don't forget the filler neck. The filler neck is going to go in first. So I guess I was a little bit too confident in my non-existent strength because I couldn't really manhandle the tank back in. So, you know, pretty much going back to square one of how I did it. I put the jack roughly in the center of the tank, or bottom of the tank, and then I jacked it up. And then now I'm going to put these straps in, or the tank straps in, and then align the filler neck near to the back so I can screw it back in, or screw the filler neck holder back in. Also, make sure that the fuel sender unit wires and a lot of the black hoses up there, that they are not pinched or any way underneath the trunk, between the body and the trunk, or between the trunk in the tank. Well, it's a little bit hard to see, but the J-bolts and the straps are on both sides, and I started putting the hose back onto the sender, and the jack is off also. So right now I'm going to put on the hose clamps, or the little, I'm not even sure if these could be called hose clamps, but we'll just call them hose clamps. The hose clamps that goes onto the fuel filter, or I mean fuel hard line that goes onto the fuel hose down here to the sender, and there's a clamp right here also. Now when you're putting this ground strap back on, be careful with it, as if you kink it too much it can snap, but do not worry, these can be found for sale on eBay online. They're a little bit longer, but they'll still do the same job. And pretty much gonna start bolting down the J-bolts nuts down. And we're gonna go look at the filler neck and see if it's aligned, or if we need to adjust the tank any further. Also, be sure that your filler neck is bolted down also, just as a reminder. So, according to what I'm seeing here, the filler neck needs to be moved over to the right just a little bit. And I'm gonna manipulate the tank from below. There you go. And all we need to do is screw down that filler neck from inside the trunk compartment, and that filler neck is secure. But we're not going to start bolting things down until we are sure that everything is in its place. So that's pretty much it. The removal of the tank is actually harder than installing. Installing is much easier, and depends on how much fuel you have inside the tank. I would highly recommend removing the fuel first. This is probably like my third time removing the tank, and I still am stubborn, and I don't want to siphon the tank first because I don't really have any sufficient siphoning tools. Aside from the one that you saw earlier, that one doesn't work well if you're pumping from a low spot to a high spot. So that's why I kind of didn't really like to siphon things, or siphon fuel. But yeah, that's pretty much it on removing a gas tank on a 1964 Dodge Custom 880 or Base 880 or a Chrysler C-Body or Chrysler letter cars, especially in the 60s, Chrysler letter cars, 61, 62, 63, 64, and I believe 65. 65 cars are pretty much the same tank overall. Just the fuel lines are different. Be careful of that, because I was about to go ahead and buy a 3/8 filter sock on the end of the sender, but it turned out it wasn't the case. It was a 7/16 or 5/16, excuse me. And the way you figure out on what size fuel filter sock you need, you would take your open end wrench and you slide it over the fuel line, and then if it fits fairly snugly, then you found your size. And in my case, it was 5/16, and 5/16 was unfortunately sold out all over the place. I guess they're selling like hotcakes all over. Some cars, like a 440 with a 6-pack engine option or something like that, it most likely has 3/8 fuel line. It's much more bigger, and a lot of these lower end cars that have a smaller engine, like a 361 or 350 or something like 351, they most likely have a smaller diameter fuel line, like a 5/16, which in this case I have 5/16, but they were sold out, so it was kind of a bit unfortunate. I wanted to put the filter sock in while I was here, but as previously stated from other videos, my school semester or college semester is about to start, so I just couldn't let the car be just sitting with all the parts laying around. I just needed to get it all fixed up again and become a reliable daily again. And I suppose when summer hits, or spring break or summer break hits, I'll most likely take the tank back off again and put the filter sock in if the parts are available. That's the most difficult part about these C-bodies is parts availability and information. Nobody really messes with these Chryslers, so nobody really knows anything about these things. So when you're fixing things, you're mostly on your own. Aside from that, I hope this fuel tank removal and installation was informational. And yeah, thanks for watching.